see the man towards the left of the screen in the middle, dressed in white. This is him a few years younger, with more hair than he has now. And this Kadir Said, who was speaking here yesterday. This was him in Ali Adi refugee camp in just nearly 2 years ago. And it's a wonderful, delightful experience to see him here now in Washington. Okay. At the outset, I have to point out that I'm not an expert on anything, and I really don't recognize the description of myself in the publication prior to this conference that was so generously written by my sister, I think, with Mohammed Hassan's assistance. I must correct some of the misinformation, although it is true that, like many friends and colleagues I was in a landmine explosion. It's not true that I was seriously injured and spent months in hospital. My injuries were not very severe, and I was hospitalised for a matter of days only. When I returned to the UK, I was able to go back to full-time work. I have no political advice to give this morning, and the little I have learned is a product of my age and the opportunity that I've had to mix with exceptional people. Although I've had the privilege to have met and learned from several leading Oromo personalities, I cannot pretend to be a wise person. Anyone who knows about my private life will be fully aware of this. I have little respect and sympathy for leaders and politicians, especially Western politicians. I have a low opinion of those who sacrifice other people on the altar of their own egos. It was an Oromo who told me, when the elephants fight, it is the grass which gets trampled. It is the trampled grass that I care about. What I have to say is not wise. I have just a common sense appreciation and response to the hundreds of accounts of abuse which I've heard and the thousands which I've read from ordinary people who have shown me just how extraordinary they can be. They are the grass which has been trampled while the elephants have fought. In the following few minutes, I will describe why I have tried to document human rights abuses and what I have come to appreciate about the effects of human rights abuses. I will summarise some of the lessons I've learnt. Finally, I'll make a few comments about the conclusions I've drawn and their relevance to the future. So, why report abuses? Initially, I believed, naively, that Western supporters of the EPRDF only needed to be told about the extent of abuses in Ethiopia, and they would somehow insist on a change of behaviour so those abuses would stop. You can see how unwise and naive I am. But it remains important to document abuses so that the Ethiopian government and its supporters can at some stage be held to account, and importantly, that victims of abuse are believed and their stories given legitimacy. One rape victim in the UK said that not being believed by the UK immigration authorities was as bad as being raped. The information is not just for voyeuristic middle-class Western spectators, for those who trade in misery and wring their hands in order to feel better about themselves. It is not for those who selectively report abuses for their own political purposes. It is information which is important fuel for organisations who advocate for refugees and for immigration authorities. It is important for educational purposes, to teach young people about human rights and to strengthen human rights work by organisations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. There are personal reasons too. Einstein said, "A man is here for the sake of other men, above all for those upon whose smiles and well-being our own happiness depends." Richard Dawkins also quotes Mark Hauser. "The principles that make up our moral grammar fly beneath the radar of our awareness." For me and many others who earn my respect, it is instinctive and self-evident that we should respect human rights. The effects of abuse. This is a man called Rare. I interviewed him in Djibouti. The damage done by abusing human rights goes much deeper than we may think. The direct physical and psychological, psychiatric effects of trauma, such as torture and rape, are bad enough. Physical and mental illness. But on the scale with which these occur in Oromia, whole districts, towns and villages consist of families which have direct experience of these abuses, resulting in a sort of societal depression. Torture and rape damage the ability to trust and have normal relationships. And what effects does that have on social interaction, economic and educational development, and cultural progress? I've interviewed several women who have escaped only to be abused as domestic servants in Arab countries. They have become so dispirited, hesitant, and unassertive that their chances of successfully coping with hostile immigration systems are very poor. Loss of breadwinners of families, death and detention of parents, siblings, spouses and children. Because of these, generations are successively impoverished. The living standard of many families in Ethiopia is dropping. This affects many more than the thousands who have been driven from their land by foreign speculators and land grabbers. Development is being put back by decades. Social division between the party faithful and the have-nots is widening. Successive members of society are successful members of society are targeted for abuse. To serve as examples, to instill fear and subservience to the regime, to encourage dependence on and obedience to the ruling party. Altruism, supporting orphans and the poor, is rewarded by accusations of supporting the OLF. Thus, the cream of the intelligentsia and the most economically and socially active are continuously being removed, like skimming the cream off milk, year after year. These problems are being seen and felt at village, town, region and national level. Educated people, a precious commodity in Ethiopia and its best investment in the future, are hemorrhaging away. University students are suspended, graduates, teachers, doctors, judges are fleeing the country. It's often said that there are more Ethiopian doctors in Manhattan than there are in Ethiopia. I know 3 former judges. Only one is now practicing law. One is a lowly civil servant in London, and the former president of the Oromia Region Supreme Court, Tashalia Bera, is a poorly paid translator in London. Look also at the international effect, at the international level, for the effects of human rights abuses. When the individual or her family can take no more in Ethiopia, she becomes a refugee. The songs are everything. Movement of populations, despite being as old as history, is now considered a problem on the scale of international terrorism and climate change. The effect of large numbers of refugees and asylum seekers is to promote xenophobia and racism. Local and national political and community leaders use the other, the foreigner, the economic migrant, as a scapegoat for their own political ends and bids for power. Political parties in the UK compete for the xenophobic vote by increasingly hostile policies towards asylum seekers. Refugees are abused populations, mostly without hope, often dislocated from their families, friends and culture, unable to pursue their professions or education. The overall majority have no prospect of resettlement. Young lives are in limbo, wasted generations in suspended animation, warehouse in refugee camps, surrounded by hostility, poverty and unemployment. Tortured and impoverished, mental ill health and domestic violence are rife among refugee populations. In the Ethiopian case, this is not the worst of it. This is Rihanna, who was snatched by an Ethiopian security squad from Hargeisa in late 2012. Even if you're a refugee from Ethiopia in a foreign country, you're still not safe from the arms of the regime in Djibouti, Hargeisa, Yemen, and Sudan. Finally, there is the brutalizing effect of abuse, affecting perpetrators as well as the victims. This loss of social responsibility will echo and reverberate between neighbours and peoples for a generational war, if the abuse even stops now. Okay, lessons that I've learned in the last 20 odd years. I continue to be amazed and shocked at how cruel people can be to each other. Not just torturers, rapists and killers, but office-bound lackeys in immigration departments in the UK, in Europe and North America. Their stubborn inability to see their asylum systems from the point of view of the asylum seeker, rather than from their seats of power and privilege, makes me extremely angry. There is no disguising the bias which they exhibit, ultimately for the sake of their political power, for the political power of their masters, scapegoating those who are sold everything, and all for the illusory attraction of wealth and power. Second, I've learned how much easier it is to divide and to stick together. I'm not just talking about political disappointments over the last 15 years. I've seen communities of refugees driven apart by trivial personal rivalries and greed for petty power and influence. I spent energy and time in Egypt recently trying to remind one community of the wise words of Colonel Oromo Press on unity when he spoke at this conference nearly 20 years ago. I suspect the hand of the TPLF in many of these divisions. In any case, remaining divided plays straight into the hands of these oppressors. Not only does it weaken our voice in the ears of potential friends and allies, it destroys our credibility with NGOs whose purpose it is to help refugees. It excuses inactivity and lessens the effect of advocacy and lobbying. Thirdly, mixing with human rights activists, I've become aware of my own prejudices and prejudices in my friends. Human rights are precisely that, rights which are associated with being human. Every human has them. the moral health of a society is reflected in how it treats its poor, its opponents, and its criminals. The killer, the torturer, the rapist, they have human rights. Some rights are absolute. In my opinion, no one has the right to kill, rape, torture, or enslave, whatever the nature of the victim or their own crimes. There is prejudice and racist hostility in Oromo society. As soon as an individual is placed in a defined group rather than treated as an individual, she is liable to be objectified as a target of prejudice and abuse. I was horrified at a wedding I attended in London last month to hear the officiating reverend use his platform to preach intolerance against homosexuals. Human rights are human rights. It's not a question of Oromo good, Amhara bad, Oromo good, Tigrayan bad, straight good, homosexual bad. We're all human and we all have human rights. Fourth lesson I've learned, the related one, is to be wary of religion. Although major religions and their leaders preach peace and understanding, we've seen horrendous atrocities put in motion by public professed men of God, namely George Bush and Tony Blair on the one hand and the Taliban on the other. I've so far felt complacent about religion becoming a problem in Ethiopia, but I believe we must be on our guard. Zenawi and his dinosaurs, and possibly the US and UK governments, would like to see the problems in Ethiopia neatly fitted into Huntington's facile clash of civilizations paradigm, and we must not allow that to happen. I've watched with growing alarm a shift from political and social activism to religious activism. This could be good if Muslims and Christians observe ideals of tolerance and cooperation, but there are forces, not least the TPLF, trying to drive a wedge between them. Fifth point, I am becoming increasingly disillusioned with violence as a means to an end. I know this is a hot topic and it's taken me a lot of thought going either way, and I still haven't made my mind up in the Oromo case. But let me give you one thing to chew over. A friend of mine worked in Afghanistan in 2011. He was told by American colleagues in Kabul that the US had spent $3 trillion in their 10-year war there. The population of Afghanistan is about 30 million. An average 12-year-old could tell you that that works out at $10,000 for every man, woman and child in Afghanistan for every year of the American occupation. That's food for thought. My final lesson concerns how resilient and positive our fellow members of the human race can be. Individuals like these have carried me forward when I just wanted to give up and live a quiet life. Garibole spent most of 4 years being detained and beaten in military camps in Borana, and in 2001 he was ordered from his cell to bury 3 prisoners who had been killed. He was not warned that one of them was his 17-year-old brother. After his release and escape to Kenya, he led 62 families gathered in Jamhuri Park during the election violence in Kenya in 2007, and was taken with them to Kakuma camp in 2008, where he told me in 2010, if we move now, we're already dead. We have died here. Just over a year ago, he was resettled in the UK. And here he is leading the dancing and blessings at the 30th anniversary celebrations of the Oromo Relief Association in Manchester in 2012. There are many, many others I could illustrate, but I want to do just one more. Here are two girls. Could we have the lights up just a little bit? Thanks. Here are two girls who escaped from Ethiopia when they were just 10 and 12 years old after their families were killed. During their journey, they were captured by traffickers in Sudan. They saw awful atrocities, including the torturing to death of the adopted mother of one of them, Samira, on the left. They themselves tortured and raped in cyanide effort for 2 years. One, Samira, on the left, was thought to be dead and was rescued from being buried alive at the last minute. They were the last survivors of a group of 35, and they saw 4 others killed for their kidneys. They were emaciated on arrival in Cairo at the end of January. These are their scarred and withered bodies on arrival. Note the stab wounds. And the scars from where they had molten plastic poured onto them by their torturers, wanting them to phone for somebody to pay a ransom for them. This is Nusriya on arrival. That's a scar on her left forearm from where the torturers put petrol on her arm and set it on fire. This is a scar on one of her feet, on the front of her ankle, from shackles that she wore for 2 years. But these youngsters are remarkably resilient. This is them in May when I interviewed them in Cairo. Obviously they're damaged people, but now they've got hope. And they can smile. Fantastic. Conclusions. Change is never quick enough for an activist. If you're pushing a frontier, then all around is what you are pushing against, what is tying you down and delaying progress. Most of what you see is failure, and your driving force is impatience and anger. It is encouraging every now and then to step back and look at the bigger picture. Then you see that there has been huge progress. On a simple level, I used to watch cowboy and Indian films on television when I was a kid. But you have no celebration of that genocide of 10 to 20 million Native Americans promoted by today's media. The colonisation of Africa, the Americas and Asia, and the slave trade, all justified by racist beliefs, are almost totally a thing of the past. I came across some quotes recently in Richard Dawkins' book, which illustrate this point. Listen to this. I quote, "No rational man, cognizant of the facts, believes that the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior of the white man. The highest places in the hierarchy of civilization will assuredly not be within the reach of our dusky cousins." Now this was written by a leading thinker and visionary of the 19th century, Thomas Henry Huxley, in 1871. Now listen. "I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favour of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races." The speaker continued to say that black people would never be voters, never be jurors or holders of office, and never be allowed to marry whites. "Physical differences," he said, I quote, "will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. I, as much as any other man, am in favour of having the superior position assigned to the white race. That was Abraham Lincoln in 1858. One more alarming example was given by a man acknowledged as one of the most forward-thinking men, forward-looking men of his time. He wrote, "And how will the new republic treat the inferior races? How will it deal with the black, the yellow man, the Jew, those swarms of black and brown and dirty white and yellow people who do not come into the new needs of efficiency?" He said the New World was not a charitable institution, and continued, "They will have to go. The men of the new republic will have an ideal that will make the killing worth the while." Now, no, this was not Adolf Hitler. It was H.G. Wells in 1902. Change happens. Just think of what's happened with the smoking. I believe America's Jurassic adherence to judicial execution and its addiction to tools of violence and the lack of international condemnation of Israel's atrocities against Palestine will become things of the past within a generation. I hope that respect for human rights will grow and that a fairer world trade system will even the playing field for poorer countries. A former Foreign and Commonwealth Office official and academic in Chatham House told me in April at Virginia Luling's funeral celebration that change was inevitable in Ethiopia, that the Ethiopian regime was so last century. She was quite confident. Change is not brought about by leaders or politicians. It happens because of people like us, talking to each other, speaking to colleagues at work and at school, complaining in bars and coffee houses, and because of social media, plays, editorials, radio and television programs, soap operas, phone-ins, comedy and satirical shows, and civil society. Change happens because organisations like OSA write letters. These are the ways our textbook of moral grammar is influenced. This emphatically does not mean that we can sit back, relax, and just let change happen. It means that it's vitally important to remain vocal and active to push this process along, but knowing that many of our effects will be unseen and unheard by ourselves. Dinosaurs like Zenawi are dying out. We must just keep going. Finally, a note of caution. We must be aware of prejudice within ourselves, to acknowledge it, challenge it, and change it. Unless there is a shift, a change in the paradigm of belly politics, of winner takes all, unless we focus on reconciliation, truth and cooperation, building and improving on experiments in South Africa and elsewhere, unless we do these things and avoid repeating history, then your grandchildren will curse you. If we concentrate on unity, cooperation and healing, then your children will bless you.